Okay, so like today let's kind of dive into something that's super old but like crazy relevant to your life right now.
Hmm.
Stoicism.
Hmm.
You want like practical wisdom, not just some boring philosophy lecture, right?
Right.
Well, our main source is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. It's basically like his own personal journal.
Hmm.
And get this, about 2,000 years ago, this Roman emperor was dealing with stress, difficult people, and like just trying to find some peace in the middle of total chaos.
Yeah, and what's so cool about meditations is that it's not like some stuffy philosophy book, you know?
Yeah.
It's real, it's personal, and it gives us this like direct link to these timeless ideas that still totally resonate with us today.
It's kind of like we're eavesdropping on a self-help guru from ancient Rome.
Right.
So let's break this down. One of the big things that jumps out from meditations is this whole Stoic emphasis on self-discipline, but not like in a restrictive, you can't have anything fun kind of way.
Exactly. Marcus Aurelius wasn't saying we should all live these like joyless lives. He saw self-discipline as the way to real freedom and like inner peace. He's got this famous quote: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And honestly, that idea is more relevant than ever in our world of like constant distractions and information overload, right?
Yeah, it's like he knew we'd be glued to our phones, feeling pressured to respond to every notification and everything instantly. And it's true. We can't control the traffic or delayed flight, but we can control how we react. And this is where the Stoics get really interesting.
Yeah.
They totally understood that emotions are like waves. We can't just stop them from coming, but we can learn how to ride them.
And that ability to choose our response, to like pause before reacting, that's incredibly empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you're facing a crazy deadline at work. Instead of letting that stress totally paralyze you, Stoicism would say, okay, break it down. Focus on the next thing you can actually do, on what you can control. Don't get overwhelmed by how huge the whole thing feels.
It's like that saying, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
Exactly.
Right.
But Stoicism isn't just for like work stuff, is it?
Right.
This applies to everything, like how we handle a frustrating commute, or even how we respond to some random heated comment online.
Absolutely. Let's say you're doom scrolling on social media, comparing yourself to everyone else, and that wave of envy just washes over.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
In that moment, Stoicism reminds you that you actually have a choice. You can keep scrolling and fuel that negativity spiral, or you can put down your phone, step away from the screen, and do something way more life-giving.
So we're talking about making like conscious choices about where we direct our energy and attention. And speaking of directing our energy, Marcus Aurelius was really into this whole idea of amor fati, which basically translates to love of fate. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Love getting stuck in traffic. Love dealing with annoying coworkers.
It does sound kind of weird at first. But it's not about just accepting everything that happens to us, good or bad. It's about changing our perspective. Marcus Aurelius actually wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." It's about realizing that challenges and setbacks are just part of life. Amor fati encourages us to find the chance for growth in those challenges instead of letting them make us bitter.
Okay, so instead of wasting energy complaining about reality, we can focus on adapting and maybe even finding a hidden opportunity in a tough situation. For example, imagine going through losing your job.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
But instead of dwelling on how unfair it all is, what if we tried to approach it with this sense of amor fati?
Exactly. It's about asking yourself, what can I learn from this? Or how can I use this to grow? Maybe that job loss leads you to a career path you'd never even considered before, one that's ultimately way better for your skills and passions. Amor fati is about finding our agency, our ability to make choices and take action even when things feel totally out of our control.
It's like we're learning to dance with life instead of getting knocked over by it. And this whole idea of finding opportunity in challenges kind of reminds me of another big Stoic principle, being present.
Yes. Marcus Aurelius was all about mindfulness, like way before it was cool. He said, confine yourself to the present. But like, how do we actually do that when our brains are always stuck in the past or freaking out about the future?
Especially with everything going on around us these days.
Yeah.
Marcus Aurelius didn't have to deal with like the news 24/7 or endless social media notifications.
Right. Although I guess you could say the rumors and political drama back in ancient Rome were kind of their own version of distractions.
Yeah, sure.
But he realized that our minds naturally wander. We get caught in these loops of anxiety or regret. And he learned that the way to deal with that wasn't to like force those thoughts away, but to gently bring his attention back to that present moment.
So instead of beating myself up for worrying about a presentation tomorrow, I could try focusing on something right in front of me, like really paying attention to my coffee.
Exactly. What does it smell like? What's
Mhm.
the texture like in your mouth? How does the mug feel in your hands? When we bring that kind of awareness to these little everyday moments, we ground ourselves in the present. And when we do that, we often find this sense of peace that we just can't get when our minds are racing.
Like hitting the reset button on our brains,
Yeah.
reminding ourselves that this moment, right here, right now, is all we really have.
And speaking of things that never change, Marcus Aurelius had some interesting thoughts on difficult people.
He did. He said something like, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Sounds like he knew a thing or two about difficult people.
Right. Like he was scrolling through Twitter. But how can we actually use this stoic approach to deal with those tricky personalities, especially now when it feels like everyone's negativity is amplified online?
I think it starts with keeping our expectations in check.
Hmm.
Marcus Aurelius wasn't being cynical or anything. He was just saying that not everyone is going to act the way we want them to all the time.
Right. And remembering that can be really freeing. It lets us approach these situations with a little more grace and a lot less frustration.
So instead of getting pulled into someone else's bad mood, we can try to be a little more understanding.
Exactly. Now, that doesn't mean we have to just accept bad behavior, but it does mean remembering that everyone's going through something. Maybe that customer is dealing with a personal crisis, or that stressed out driver is rushing to the hospital. We don't have to make excuses for their actions, but a little compassion can go a long way in protecting our own inner peace.
It's about choosing kindness even when it's tough. And speaking of tough stuff, Marcus Aurelius wasn't afraid to talk about the hardest thing of all, our own mortality.
Definitely. He was totally aware of how short life is. He wrote, "Consider how many before you have died, how many after you will die. Your life is just one moment in time." I know that might sound kind of intense, but the Stoics didn't see it as a bad thing. They saw it as this powerful reminder to really live.
It's like that saying, life is short.
But it's also the longest thing you'll ever do. And when we realize that our time is limited, it can be really motivating. It helps us to appreciate each moment more, to let go of little annoyances, and to focus on what really matters. It makes us ask, am I living a life that feels meaningful? Am I making the most of this time I have?
It's about making every day count.
Hmm.
But it wasn't just about accepting fate and living in the moment for the Stoics, was it? There's more to their idea of a good life, right?
For sure. Living a virtuous life was key for the Stoics. They believed that acting in line with our values, even when it's hard, is the truest way to find fulfillment. And Marcus Aurelius talked about 4 main virtues that were central to Stoic philosophy.
It's like having this inner compass, always pointing them in the right direction, even when everything's going crazy around them. So tell me more about these virtues. What were they, and how did people actually live them out?
Okay, so the 4 big ones in Stoicism are wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. And these weren't just like vague ideas for the Stoics, they were things you practiced woven into everyday life. Take wisdom, for example. It wasn't about knowing everything, it was more about really wanting to learn and grow all the time, questioning your assumptions, challenging your own biases, and like approaching the world with a beginner's mind.
So a little humility goes a long way,
Yeah.
even for a Roman emperor. But it makes sense. When we're so sure we're right, we miss out on new information and ways of seeing things. We get stuck in our own little bubbles.
Exactly. And that's the opposite of wisdom. Now, justice was also huge for the Stoics. And for them, it was way more than just following the rules. It was about treating everyone fairly and respectfully, no matter who they were or how they treated you.
Which honestly can be really tough,
Yeah.
especially when we run into those difficult people we were talking about earlier.
It is. But the Stoics believed that real justice means acting with integrity even when it's hard. It's about remembering that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, even the people who are really testing our patience.
It's about choosing to be kind, even when it'd be easier to get mad. That takes courage, which, if I remember right, is another Stoic virtue.
You got it. And for the Stoics, courage wasn't just about being brave physically. It was about facing any kind of fear, speaking up for what you believe in, going after your dreams, or even just admitting your own flaws.
It's about finding that strength inside to keep going, even when you're scared, because you know you're doing the right thing.
And that brings us to the last virtue, temperance. I know this one gets a bad rap sometimes. It can sound kind of restrictive, like we're supposed to give up all the fun stuff and live like monks.
Yeah, like, show some temperance, young lady said in a super strict voice.
Exactly. But the Stoics didn't see temperance as denying yourself. It was about finding balance in life, enjoying things mindfully without going overboard. Practicing self-control not because you had to, but because you'd rather be free than controlled by your impulses.
So it's about making smart choices that are good for us in the long run, instead of just chasing whatever feels good in the moment.
Exactly. And when we can develop all four of these virtues, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, they work together to build this foundation for a life with meaning and purpose.
It's like building this inner fortress that can handle anything. And what's so amazing is that these ideas written by a Roman emperor almost 2,000 years ago are still so powerful. It's like he was talking right to us across time, you know, giving us this timeless wisdom on how to be human.
He was. And I think that's what keeps drawing people to Stoicism. It's not some outdated, irrelevant philosophy. It's like this practical toolkit for living a better life, a life with more purpose, resilience, and inner peace. And the best part, anyone can use these tools. You don't have to be a philosopher or an emperor to benefit from them.
So for our listener who's thinking, okay, this is great, but where do I even start? What would you recommend?
Well, one thing that really helped Marcus Aurelius was journaling. He used his journal, which eventually became meditations, as a way to think about his day and process his emotions and remind himself of these Stoic principles.
It was like his own personal self-care routine, except he didn't need a fancy app for it.
Right. He had his pen and paper, and that was enough. And we can do the same thing. Take a few minutes every day to check in with yourself, to think about your experiences, to see if there are any patterns in your thoughts. Ask yourself, what am I struggling with right now? What's making me stressed or anxious? And how can I use these Stoic ideas to deal with those things in a better way?
You know, it's funny how the answers we need are often already inside us, just waiting for us to find them.
They are. Sometimes all it takes is a little quiet time, a willingness to look inward, and maybe a little nudge from a Roman emperor to help us remember.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. What an incredible journey. We've explored the heart of Stoicism, from the power of choosing our reactions to the importance of living a good life. And I have to say, I'm feeling pretty inspired.
Me too. And I hope our listener is feeling it too, because at the end of the day, that's what Stoicism is all about, giving us the power to live our best lives right here, right now.
So to everyone listening, keep exploring Stoicism. Keep asking those big questions. And like Marcus Aurelius wrote, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Therefore, guard accordingly and take care that you entertain no notions unsuitable to virtue and reasonable nature.
Words to live by. Until next time, keep searching for wisdom wherever you can find it.